And we are live for episode 45 of Agencyphonics. And today I am accompanied with my fellow sidekick, Mr. Peter Hoole, and our very special guest, Siji Onabanjo, who joins us from the agency Cyberduck. But before we get into our interview today with Siji, I just wanted to quickly say a couple of thank yous as always. First of all, today I want to thank everyone listening because I've been getting Pete and I get so many lovely messages from people all over the world saying how much they're enjoying the show. I had one literally just before I went on today telling me how much they're enjoying it. And we really do appreciate the feedback. So thank you to everybody. And also just to let you know that Agencyphonics, as you know, we run it as a not-for-profit. It is a social enterprise, and we're very fortunate to have Forecast as our sponsors. They help us fund, as Pete and I were working away from our homes yesterday. Actually, it's quite a significant investment that we make into Agencyphonics in terms of financial investment, and we're really grateful that Forecast help us fund that. So we're grateful to them. Yeah, thank you. And we put a copy of the bit of information in the show notes around Forecast and a few other the people that kind of help make this show happen. Thank you to Caitlin, who's producing today as well. She's always there in the background. She works very hard to help with all our video clips, and we're very grateful for her support as well. So, intros are done. And Siji, welcome.
Good to see you again and speak to you again, Spencer and Pete.
Yeah, we were just saying it's been a long time because I used to follow your life a lot on Facebook probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And then through the data scandal, I had a hissy fit and quit. I'm slightly hypocritical because I'm still on Instagram, but and WhatsApp, which is basically your Facebook, right? So, yeah. But it's really good to see you today. And you are one of the nicest people in this industry of ours. I get a bit sick and tired of the amount of people keep coming up to me saying how nice. Have you met Siji? What a lovely bloke he is.
That's for real? Okay.
You are real. And also, I think for me personally, it's been great watching you at Cyberduck because actually, you've been you must be the longest employee ever in an agency. How long have you been there for now?
Well, the same thing. I think he's a rare beast, right? When we look at new business people in agencies, look at their LinkedIn careers, they're normally like a year, 14 months, 15 months. Yeah. You've been there.
I've been there. This is my 10th year.
10 years.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? I'm not even the longest serving at Cyberduck.
You know,
I'm not even the longest serving at Cyberduck.
Are you not?
No, there's.
Is it
probably
once people can't leave?
That's how we market ourselves. We're a digital cult, yeah. No, I think I'm maybe 5th or 6th. Apart from the 3 founders, there's I think 2 other people who've been there longer than me, Gareth and Harry. Yeah.
Wow. Do you know 10 years in agency new business is like 400 in dog years?
It probably feels that way too, if I'm being honest with you.
But the thing that I wanted to talk to you about is I'm a great believer that actually when it comes, and I know that you have a split role because you also cover sort of client and new business as well. But in terms of new business, I genuinely believe that longevity is the key to success because you must have built so many relationships over that long period that, in a way, you must have a great network. You must have had people still come back to you from conversations you had many years ago. Is that true? Do you think does it get easier, or have I just made that up?
No, I think you've definitely got a point there. The agency we were 10 years ago when I started compared to where we are now, very different agency in terms of the type of projects we work on and things like that. But in that time, we still have clients who we speak with and we work with from over that period. I had a couple of clients at my wedding 4 or 5 years ago, in terms of that kind of relationship that you build up, because my approach, probably we might get into this later on, but my approach is to just be myself and treat my job as an extension in some ways. And, when I'm speaking to a client, I'm trying to form a genuine relationship with them. It's not just a sale, which is why it's a good crossover with the client side too, because once they become a client, I like to continue to work with them and speak with them to a point that we actually form genuine friendships. And some of my best nights out have been with some of my clients in some ways. So, but to your point about being at Cyber for 10 years, yes, you do get to learn and understand about the agency. Like when I'm talking about Cyberduck, it's something that I'm invested in. And I think clients and prospects, they see that. So it doesn't feel like a typical sale where it's like, okay, this person's role is just to get me in the door, then who knows if the quality is going to be as good. If I'm saying, look, I've been here for 10 years because there's certain things that the agency does which I stand by and I know that we're great at, in some ways that provides a lot of reassurance to prospects too.
Yeah, I think that the when people see, and I remember, you know, when I had my agency and I was going into sort of certain industries that I was selling into, it's almost like the more my face was seen there, the more I kept going back, the more trustworthy I became, because I was a regular, you know, I wasn't just someone who's in a job for a couple of years and going to go, and people did business with me, I wouldn't be there. So I empathize. I think that makes sense. But what I also love is what you just said, and Pete and I spoke about this only yesterday, which is there is a bit of a lost art, you know, in treating clients as more than just clients. You know, I think there's certainly in the last 10 years, I've noticed, I mean, I'll give you an example of this, right? So if on my Instagram, I've got one of my old account managers connected to me, and I can see that they go on holiday with one of my ex-clients. So clearly along the years, their relationship went from being client to friendship. And I think, you know, that used to happen. It feels like it used to happen a lot more with client services many years ago. But in more recent years, people are, you know, they don't want to cross a boundary or a border of, you know, becoming not necessarily a best friend, but an acquaintance or have a good relationship. So I like the fact that you obviously, you know, you try to form good relationships, good friendships, because it must make the work a lot easier. And, you know, when you are friends with people, right?
Yeah, it does. At the same time, once a relationship kind of crosses into a friendship realms, it can become harder too, as you can imagine. You have to have those difficult conversations. But I think being able to work for a client that likes you and the team and you like them does make things easier. It's not a friendship in a sense of there's nothing being passed across. Like they are paying us still and we're giving them a service. So that's never forgotten.
Yes.
But it just makes it so much easier when, you know, you get on with a client.
Yeah, because I guess if a client's got an issue, you know, with their agency, and they have a good relationship, they're not just going to ring up shouting and screaming. They are actually going to ring up and say, "Hi, listen, we need to have a conversation. Can we?" And it's a little bit, you know, it's easier. And you know, agency life is tough at the best of times. You know, there's a lot of talk generally about how, you know, mental health affects people in agencies more than other businesses. And you know, I don't know if you saw, I did a debate a couple of years ago in the Houses of Parliament, which was the scariest thing I ever did in my life. But I had to argue that actually sometimes the clients, you know, they contribute towards those mental health issues because the demands they put on agencies often. But I think actually the truth is that if you do have a good relationship with your client, they'll be much more sympathetic and empathetic to the work you're doing. If things go wrong, have a nice conversation with you rather than shout at you and you know, be bullies as it happens.
I think it's going to be much harder for a client to ring up and scream and shout if you've got a good relationship with them, isn't it? At the end of the day, they're going to call up and say, "Hey, Siji, what's going on? Can you help me out?"
Yeah, but I think as well, like, ultimately, that good relationship, that's a basis for that is trust. Yeah. And fundamentally, you're not friends with them before you start working with them. So they hire you as an agency because you've convinced them that you will do a good job for their project. If you can be the nicest person in the world, you can be pally with a client, but then if work you're doing for them is crap or like constant issues, you know, you're not actually going to get to that level of trust because the client's just going to be frustrated the whole time. So I think fundamentally, like if you were to kind of start, I'd say make sure you're doing a good job and then build the relationship as well. Like alongside that, don't rely too much on the relationship and not for doing a good job.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, like, I mean, I guess you probably have a similar approach, but a lot of new business in agencies traditionally was always chemistry and creds, right? So chemistry, do I like you, trust you, and creds, do I believe you can do a good job? And I I still believe today that you've got to have both, to have a successful client, because no client's going to give you the work if they don't like you or don't trust you or don't believe or you share their values, because like they want to enjoy who they work with too, and they want to trust you're not going to let them down, right? But equally, right, if someone likes you a lot and then you let them down with delivery, then that's not going to work either. You have to get it right. But I like that you've clearly understand that, and I think that's something that is an education piece. I think a lot of newer client service people really have got to learn to master, not treat everyone like it's a transaction, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure every agency, like when they go in to speak to a client, says, "Look, we want to form a real partnership with you." That's kind of a said thing, but actually looking at what it is that creates a partnership with someone and making sure that you're doing the right things. And also, so you talk about kind of new client services people coming in. I think it's understanding where you fit into the equation and where you need help from the rest of the team. So I came into the digital industry it was my first real job apart from KFC while I was at school, and an internship while I was at Future Publishing.
You've gone from Kentucky Fried Chicken to Cyberduck.
To Cyberduck. I've got a funny story. So Spencer knows Danny, the CEO of Cyberduck, and so obviously he loves ducks, and he called the company Cyberduck because of a duck. And I remember this was one of our first kind of meetings that we went to together, and he offered to buy me lunch. And I was like, okay, great. So we went into a Pret, and I love the hoisin duck wraps in Pret. And I just remember picking it up and handing it to him to pay for it for me. And his face just changed. And I was like, I'm not sure what's going on. But he kind of told me,
so he likes
can't be eating a duck.
You can't actually eat them. Do you know there's actually a story that Pete and I often share about this, which we had a designer work for us once. She was what's called a Namematarian.
Namematarian, okay.
Yeah, so a Namematarian is someone who can't eat any meat that's named after an animal. So they can eat pork, but they couldn't eat lamb. They could have what other examples can I think here? They could have bacon, but they couldn't eat chicken.
Okay.
It's named after an animal. And I really didn't think this was a real thing, but apparently it is. So I kind of empathize a bit with Danny there, because he loves ducks. She couldn't eat them. So
So whenever he takes me out for lunch now, if we're on good terms, then I won't order duck. But if I'm trying to stick to it, I'll get duck.
He's probably listening to this. He probably
he's probably noted that down. Yeah,
he knows your tactics now. So it's funny because you're right. I do know Danny, and the first time I ever met Danny actually was he came in to a meeting in our agency. But I think it was. I'm pretty sure he was in the early stage of his business, or he hadn't quite started yet. But so yeah, it was quite a few years ago now. But he has built a fantastic business, and has always, very much pioneered a lot of the stuff around, I guess in a way, the sort of products and service digital transformation stuff. He was very early on there, in those hack days that you guys used to get really involved with, probably still do. So your role now is Chief Growth Officer, and I love that title. Yeah. So I guess ultimately your job is you're responsible for the growth. And so therefore you kind of have to oversee marketing, account and sales. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's a good title to try and cover essentially what it is, which is growing. Well, it's two. So if I break it down, there's two facets. There's growing the agency and helping our clients grow. But ultimately on the growing of the agency side, which involves bringing clients on board and growing them, it bears the new business, marketing, and client services like account management. The marketing side of things, I'm not too involved in the day-to-day. We have a marketing manager, a growth director who kind of looks more after the marketing side of things. But the new business and client services, they're the areas where I kind of now sit mostly on in terms of my role in my day-to-day.
Amazing. And we did speak just briefly before we started today, and we talked about that role of sales and marketing, because I was saying I always, because actually one of the things I guess in the book we wrote, Agencynomics, Pete and I noticed that as people untangle their roles and they become more specialists in agencies, they tend to do their jobs better. Otherwise, if they get really busy and they do too many things, something's got to give, right? And I guess we were sort of saying you felt sales and marketing does work sometimes as a role, but there comes a point where you have to decouple it almost.
Yeah, fully that. I mean, when you're a smaller agency, and you have to sort of wear many hats, it's natural that you're going to take on a number of different roles. I actually started as an intern at Cyber, doing SEO and digital marketing. That's why I was brought in. Wow. By the end of my internship, I was being brought into client meetings and having those conversations with clients, and I guess that's where they and myself saw I was able to add a lot of value. But yeah, the bigger you get, I think it's important to understand and also know for a good of the agency. So kind of put your own personal pride and ego aside, but for good of the agency, you can't do everything. I remember this probably like 3-4 years ago when I was doing the new business, for marketing, the account management. The team was much smaller at that point, and there was just too much going on, especially when you're an ambitious agency. So at the same time, I don't want to be fully removed from marketing, because new business and marketing, they do tie in very closely together. And it makes sense in many ways having someone in the agency who can see what's going on with both and kind of tying them together. And I guess that's where my role sits now across the two.
Yeah. You've got to be able to feed back to marketing what's working from a lead gen perspective and what's not, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's about sort of working smart, isn't it? So you leave people who are better than you to do what they're good at, but then it's all about validating what the marketing team are doing with the types of inquiries and clients we're bringing in. Do they match who we are as an agency? Is it the kind of projects that the team wants to be working on? Is what channels are working for us, which channels aren't working so well? And as we continue to grow and our targets get bigger, how do we adapt our marketing to ensure that when we start that conversation with those prospects, we're in a strong position?
Yeah. How scientific are you in terms of you getting, obviously, you the first person to see the leads when they come in?
So no, in the new business team, I have a new business executive. So he's sort of the first port of call in terms of like qualifying a lead. So if an inquiry comes into us, he'll be the first one to check it out, get their requirements, understand more about what they're looking for, check the first level to see if it's a good fit for us or not. I will get involved in a lead more so when it gets towards the part where we're either going to be pitching or the conversation gets more serious or it's a big strategic account. But that being said, we have meetings weekly internally where all of this is being fed to me, and marketing are also involved in that. So there's that constant communication going on between the two teams.
You're able to say, look, we've had a number of leads, X, Y, and Z have come over the last 3-4 weeks, whatever.
Yeah.
Some of them aren't quite where we need to be in terms of size or sector or service, and feed that back and fine-tune the marketing.
Exactly. And we like even going as far as those that become clients, like looking back and going, where did this lead start from? And what was that journey? And trying to basically, because I think the size we're at now, sometimes it's about we're doing the right thing, but there's like marginal gains you can make or tweaks you can make to a process that can improve things. So
that, by the way,
what's that say?
Spencer and I are big fans of that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so it's like making those tweaks to improve things. And we have a commercial director at Cyber too, who loves spreadsheets and gets very excited to show me like everything that's going on in a spreadsheet. And I was like, okay, so what's the summary of all of this? Okay, we need to be doing more marketing in this direction, or we need to be putting out more webinars or doing more events, or et cetera, et cetera.
So one of the things I'd love to get your perspective on as well, having, currently, as you're currently doing the role and you've been doing it for a good few years now, I think probably the hardest role in an agency to recruit is a new business role. I mean, I think most agencies we work with really struggle to find, people that could come in and become, whether the title be, business development director or even, some kind of growth role, or maybe head of partnerships, sometimes people call them. What do you have any? Obviously, you've got someone in your team as well, but I mean, have you got any advice to anyone? Could you, if they were trying to find someone to do new business in their age? Because in a way, you kind of stumbled into it, didn't you? Because you kind of came in doing digital marketing and SEO, so you almost had to come in and learn the agency first, right, before you've gone into that role. But
yeah, like I said, in terms of my work history and background, started at KFC, but we joke and stuff, but learning how to speak to people and deal with customers. And this was just money whilst I was trying to, get to university and stuff like that. And I knew I was going to be going to a good university, but also it's interesting how people perceive you and treat you. Not to disrespect any kind of service like workers, but people tend to talk to you in not the nicest ways sometimes. So it's learning how to deal with certain people.
Those life skills.
Have a relationship with a client and a customer.
I couldn't agree more with you. I was almost going to write a post about this week, because I think back to my first job. I worked at Summerfields on the checkouts, and when I was 16, I couldn't look the customers in the eye, and I'd like to be putting the stuff through on the checkout like this, and I sort of say, "Oh, it's £25.60 like this," and hardly speak to them.
Yeah.
But being forced to do that week in, week out, you learn to talk to people, have conversations, deal with the difficult issues. You're right. People don't treat you with that much respect when you're in those roles sometimes, and you have to learn to overcome that.
I'm just imagining Siji having to deal with drunk people, you having to deal with middle-class people in your supermarket.
I mean, I have stories for days from my KFC days, but on our internal Slack channels, we had a conversation last week where a new kind of water cooler topic gets posted each week. And this one was about people's first jobs. And interesting to see how many people in the company just had these random jobs. But someone made a comment that I think everyone should have to do that sort of work, the Summerfields or the KFCs, because you learn so much, you learn so many lessons and things about life from doing that, which can help you in your career. So, yeah. Pete and I, we always used to say, if anyone had any kind of retail experience, we also really, really consider them strongly, because everything you just said. I mean, I started working in, Top Man basically at 16 years old, so I had the same thing. I had to learn to deal with general public, and you learn life skills on communication. You have to talk to all sorts of people, more walks of life, and deal with all sorts of, abruptness and politeness and rudeness and whatever. And so it does bring good life skills. So did you find there was any correlation on that? It's a great exercise. I think every agency should do it. Get everyone to write down their first job. But a friend of mine, he does it, and he says that whenever he meets someone networking, he always asks them what the first job was, and he can always tell a lot about them from the first job. Like, he tells a lot about the way that they work. Was there anything else interesting from or not? Maybe I'm asking you to analyze too much now. You're probably getting. I need to go back and look at everyone's first jobs now and go, okay, what's that say about you?
I think you can tell about the way they work. Like, if they had to work in a really hard job and long hours, often they're the ones that tend to work longer hours. Yeah. They're more resilient to do it. The ones that maybe didn't have to do that kind of stuff, they kind of, it's a lot harder for them to deal with pressure.
Yeah. Hands up if you did a paper round.
I didn't.
Hands up, you did 3.
You did 3 paper rounds.
Yeah, I had to do the Monday to Friday, then the weekend, and then I did the Star and the Courier, which was the local free newspaper, on a Wednesday, Thursday. Technically, that's 4, I think, actually.
Yeah.
I got paid like 15 quid a week for that lot.
Did you? Yeah. I got £9.90.
Yeah. Comparing paper rounds. Is that where we got to? No, I mean,
coming back to the conversation, do you feel that maybe agencies then should look, based on your own experience in a way, look internally first for people from within their teams to move into new business and maybe invest in them with sales training with other things first? People who understand the agency, the culture, the values, or do you think? I mean, obviously you've got someone else in your team now, but or do you think that it is just a question of just having to get out there and recruit and just working hard at it?
I think it's a mixture of both. I look at the team. So actually, within the sort of new business function, we're going to have 4 people within that team. One of them used to work in the marketing team, and we've brought them over to work on new business. One's an experienced hire that we've brought in, and one of the other ones, what I looked for when I was interviewing, it was more of like an entry level role, but there's a couple of things that I look for. One is a genuine interest in digital. Okay. I think that's first and foremost one of the important things. In the past, I've brought in people for the entry level new business, but even at the interview stage, I could tell digital wasn't something that they were overly interested in. It was just like experience. So the hires that I've worked the best and I've enjoyed the role the most, I've always had a genuine interest in digital. So that's what I look for. I also look for those who have done something a bit different. So, we talk about those early jobs, people who've done things which, show that they've gone above and beyond in some way or have a unique hobby or interest, because new business is, as I keep saying, a lot of it is about forming those relationships with clients and bringing different experiences to a table always helps. So they're the 2 main things I look for. I think there's certain things around sales that you can teach them. You can teach them about how you as a business, you as an organization, your services, what you do, how you do things. But I think certain people have like a natural. We've got a doorbell ringing, so sorry about that.
Great answer phone. Hello, Siji.
Yeah, it'll go off in a second.
Love it. This is the beauty of live. Love it. He's muted. Oh, we wanted to know, was it a call or was it a delivery?
We'll never know. I think it was a delivery.
It was. You need to go and get it. Have you just missed out on something for the weekend?
No, it's all right. We'll leave it outside my door.
I know what it is. One
of my neighbours has like a folder system, which really isn't that interesting, which I know it is from Amazon. But
what is it? Free KFC for life for all the plugging we've been doing on this.
Isn't it? Yeah. I'll just play this video too, and hopefully I'll get a few buckets. But no, where were we? So in terms of hiring people, I look for a passion for digital. So I like to understand, have they done anything themselves, either started a business, anything like entrepreneurial, did they study anything to do with digital? Have they built an app? Have they got their own website? Those are kind of things that interest me because it shows a genuine passion. During the interview as well, I try to find out more about their problem solving skills, and because again, how I see new business, and I think more and more people are seeing it this way, you're helping a client solve a problem. You're not a car salesman. The best clients you bring on board are those who build that trust with you at the beginning stage, and therefore when they come to you with an issue, the new business people are the first people who have to try and help them solve it. So if people are able to do that naturally, I think is a good kind of criteria too.
And do you get sales training at all? So I hear what you're saying, because obviously, yes, you have got to. Ultimately, it's what we do as agencies, right? We solve people's problems, but and sometimes we have to go to them and help them understand where their problems are when they don't realise. Obviously, clients as well, and that commercial stuff's quite. But do you ever give sales training to the people in the business? Have you ever done sales training along the way, or not really? Because it purely is more of a relationship service play.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a training perspective, yes, we've done sort of training courses, probably more about certain specific aspects. So like pitching, for example, which is a skill. Not everyone can pitch, and it's something that you get better if more you practice. But having like people come in and run workshops around pitching, understanding more about negotiation as well. I've read quite a few different books in the past about sales, and also I love the psychology aspects of it, and about how people like one book which I really like is The Hidden Agenda by Kevin Allen. So that's all about understanding more about the people's motives behind the sale and sort of leading into that a little bit more.
Great. That one in the show notes. That sounds like a really good recommendation. I've not actually read it, so I think that sounds like a good book for me to look at as well.
No, he's a really fascinating guy. So in fact, after I read the book, I got him to speak at one of our events to our audience. I thought it was just like really kind of fascinating. Books on like negotiation as well. Just various aspects of new business. And then I think you can never stop learning. So one of the things I do with the team internally is every couple of weeks on a Friday, we'll have an hour session where it's just like knowledge transference and learning about what's happening in the past. It could be, look, we did this pitch. What do we think went well? What didn't go so well? How can we improve? It could be, okay, I want you to tell me about DevOps, for example, and getting people to speak about what they understand about what we're selling to clients. And then we get experts within the company to, help kind of increase our knowledge on certain areas. So yeah, I think training is an ongoing thing with new business. I think the best training is on the job. Once you kind of get into it, you'll learn, you'll pick things up. Having people in your team who are senior, who have kind of been there and made a lot of those mistakes helps as well. But as in my case, when I joined Cyberduck and I kind of came out of uni into a new business kind of management role, and probably underqualified, to be honest, both managing people, but also managing that function. You learn of a job and you make mistakes. You learn from the terrible pitches, you learn from the bad conversations and things with clients. And you learn from, sometimes even mismanaging people, like, okay, I could have done this differently. And I think just having that self-awareness is important at all times as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think what you are kind of, the way you're communicating is actually, well, just shows us why you're such a well-liked person and how come you've always come across as like someone who's, because you're humble enough to say, actually I have made mistakes and I have learned lessons, where so many people, yes, you're right. It does. I think everyone should do an emotional intelligence test, like an EQ test, just to see what they're good and bad at. Pete and I have done them recently, and we both have strengths and we have weaknesses, but that self-awareness, I think it can help you get rid of the imposter syndrome, a little bit of pretending you know everything and don't need to be taught anything, you can't make mistakes. And like Pete and I often go into meetings with leadership teams, and, we'll have sort of some people who just don't want to listen or, engage. They know everything, but they don't know everything, because Pete and I still learn new things every single day about this industry. No one can know everything. It's, as you know, it's moving forward so fast. I mean, DevOps wasn't a role necessarily in an agency 15 years ago. Today, if you're in technology business, it's probably a key part of your strategy moving forward. So I love that you can admit that and be vulnerable enough to say that as well, Siji, because I think it's what makes a player is someone who can do that in an organization. I think anyone listening to this who does work in there is don't be afraid to make mistakes and say you're sorry when you get it wrong, but just make sure you could say to everyone, this is the lesson that I learned. I probably did that a few weeks ago. Something I was convinced always works in a certain way, I found out it could work another way, and I was really open to saying, right, let's just move to that way now and pursue it. So yeah, I think it's really, really good to have that. Is that part of your culture? Do you think have you got that at Cyberduck generally, that everyone has that kind of approach?
Yeah, I think more and more. It's I mean, again, I've not worked in other agencies, but I think openness internally is like really important, because when there is conflict as well, it means that you can resolve them much faster. So it's sometimes there's positive friction. I'm sure most organizations have that, but I think to have a good culture, you have to be able to trust those you work with, but also know that they have the company's best interest and your best interest at the same time. And sometimes just walking on eggshells around people's topics because you don't want to upset the apple cart is actually counterproductive, because oftentimes that thing will always come to a surface at some point, and it might be too big a beast at that point to solve and change. So us in some weird ways, like getting an ISO accreditation where you have to look at like non-conformities and parts of business which need to be improved, has actually really helped us, I think, look inwardly and understand what we do well and where we need help. And I guess that's the approach I've always taken to my department, my team too. I was speaking at a conference last year, a new business conference, and key kind of thing that kept coming up was new business isn't just a function within a business, it should be everybody in the agency's business. And that's almost like how I think me coming in fresh and new and realizing I can't design. Like I remember going to a hackathon with a team, and I was just like, you know what, I can't really contribute anything. I'm just here for the vibes and to try and learn something. But I was trying to build my website, and at the end of it, I just knew, I'm definitely not a designer. I'm definitely not a developer. But these guys are great at what they do. I'm never going into a new business pitch by myself again, because the people who can best talk about those things are those who are actually doing it day in, day out, and are great at what they do. So when it comes to myself, I know where my strengths are. I think that's talking about us as an agency, maybe setting that vision, the strategy side. But I'd always have, if it's let's say it's a website platform or redevelopment project, I'll always bring in someone from the tech team or someone from our service design or UX team to come into a meeting too, because they can talk about what they've done for clients to a level of detail that I never could, and probably don't want to, because I don't think I can do it justice, and it comes across more authentic too. So I guess that's another kind of key thing for me. Is like with your new business team, I think you're only going to be successful if you don't treat it as a silo, but you try and get everyone else in the agency involved and get them excited about the wins as well, and the upcoming pitches and the upcoming leads and things like that, because their contributions to that pitch will make it stronger.
Yeah, I spoke this morning to Camilla Honey, the founder of JDFI. And for many years, she's had a great saying, which is new business is everyone's business. And I know that kind of pops up that phrase everywhere from time to time, but she coined that phrase. And I love that. New business is everyone's business. I think every agency should take that and try and understand what role it is everyone plays. Because as you rightly said, sometimes it's just about someone demonstrating their expertise in a particular subject. Sometimes about liking and sharing the posts that you do or just be able to communicate easily what their agency does to their friends and family, because you never know who they're connected to in life. So that's great. And I think just the only other thing I'd say is also creating an environment of like a safe environment in an agency where it's okay to make mistakes as well, and not have a blame culture, because I think sometimes it's not just an agency thing, but generally in business, people can be afraid to. Everyone's looking to try and blame somebody else if something goes wrong, right? And that's not healthy, is it, for anyone?
And I think that comes from the top. So if people in my team can see where I say, look, this is a good challenge we've got, I don't have the answer to it, that gives them confidence. I don't need to have all the answers too. I think for me in my team, I want people to be hardworking. I want my team to be hardworking and dedicated, but not afraid to fail. If something doesn't go like something I like to say a lot is, it's not that deep. Like nothing that we're doing on a day-to-day at work is actually that deep.
You're not saying
goes on. Like if anything, this last year and a half or so has taught us is there's so many other things in life that are more important than what we're doing. You have a bad presentation, you mess up as long as you learn from it, like learn, and then we're all good, because other opportunities will come along. And if you foster that kind of environment within your agency, within your team, more often than not, you actually get success, because people are not afraid to try new things. And also when you push back on it, they're more willing to accept it. So,
Love that. Pete and I, we've kind of like over the years, obviously worked with quite a lot of agencies that that have really good business development functions in their agencies. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, where do you stand, like when you're sort of pitching for a new piece of business, also, and then you lose it, as you just sort of talked about. Sometimes you lose these opportunities. How do you handle that from a mindset perspective? When we always used to tell ourselves it was obviously meant to be. It was just our way. It was meant to be, and it was kind of a way to move on. But if you lose things, do you try and learn from those experiences? Do you talk to the clients about why they didn't go with you, or do you just psychologically try and create a way to just go, well, it wasn't meant to be, and move on? Or how do you handle those things?
No, because I think if I've got to a point where we're pitching to a client, then it's not a case of it's not meant to be. Like, by that point, I'm happy, and that if we won that client, they'd be a good client for us.
Okay,
it'll be a good bit of business for us. So I tend not to use. I think it's easy to kind of say that and just go, oh well, but then you're not actually learning from that. So for the last 4 or 5 years, feedback is so important, whether we win or lose. If we lose a pitch, we'll send them a feedback form, like with so many. It's the least they can do for us after spend all that time.
Guilt them into it. They've said no. Now you can fill out a 15-page questionnaire.
Exactly. If you said yes, you wouldn't have to do this, right? But loads of different criteria on various parts of the process, how they found it, if there's things that we can do. And often you do get some very useful feedback from that. So, yeah.
Who runs that process for you? Is that marketing or the new business team or someone externally?
It'll be the new business team, yeah.
Okay, so that the prospect is feeding back directly in some cases to the people that were pitching.
Yeah, exactly. Or it may be me directly messaging a prospect. Sometimes not involved in every single pitch that we do.
You say to them, be brutally honest.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, by the point we get to that pitch stage, they should know how we like to work, and that's in honesty and openness with clients.
Well, you'd like to match.
Yeah, exactly. And in that same vein, tell us what we did well, tell us what we didn't do so well. Internally, we looked at it as well. You're always going to be able to spot things that you could have done differently or better. Sometimes, but the worst ones for me are those which we had this, I think towards the start of last year and the year before that, we went through a period where we went through a few different, I think there was 4 or 5 different projects / tenders / pitches we went for, where how they kind of scored them was very methodical, and you got a percentage score at the end. We missed out by 1% on 4 or 5 different occasions. And that was tough to take because, as you know, in new business, there's never, the margins are so tight, but there's never any prize for second place. You either win it and you get everything, or you lose it and, there's nothing to show for it. So when you're that close 4 or 5 times, it's hard to take. But at the same time, what I just said to the team is, we're doing something right to have got to that 1% margin. Let's look at where we can make those small tweaks and gains to improve for the future. But at the same time, let's keep doing what we're doing because we're close. And we also know the projects we're going for now are at that next level, that next tier of client and project, that some of the people that we're losing to 3 or 4 years ago, we would have never even thought we were playing in the same kind of territory as them, the big consultancy firms, things like that. Now we're getting close to them. And since then, we're going through a bit of a hot streak at the moment, and we're winning quite a few deals, which is fantastic. And it just shows that mindset of learning from what you've done in the past, keeping that momentum going, keeping that energy going. Energy is important too, because you can't get too flat after a loss. Otherwise, it's like Spencer said, mental health in the agency game is a serious thing. So many people, I think, even that I know, have had mental health issues. So it's important not to take losses too personally. Going back to that whole, it's not that deep kind of message,
What you just touched on then is quite topical with Pete and I at the moment, because obviously we're working with agencies that are often sort of scaling up, and And inevitably what happens is they get into a comfort zone where they can win all of the new business opportunities against, you know, a set type of competitor of a similar size agency, maybe smaller. And then they suddenly go up a gear, you know, they might win one big step change client. It takes them up the next level. And then what happens is that the agency's brand, their pitch assets, everything doesn't quite look as sharp as the next level up. And they suddenly find themselves invited in to pitches with, as you rightly said, larger agencies. It's often have been who have much bigger, larger resource, experience, gravitas, fame, even notoriety. And all of a sudden you're going into those pitches and, you know, and I see people suddenly they go from winning everything to having very difficult losing streaks. So I think that the advice you give on getting that feedback continually is really, really important. And I think probably even when you think about it, probably win or lose, it's good to get the feedback, isn't it? Really, actually, you can always be learning. And I think that's great that you guys sound like you've gone through a bit of a similar thing and you've suddenly found yourself against some really big fish, some of the consultancies, and you've got to almost hold your own against them, but still you're not them, right? And so you've got to get across who you are and why you're different.
Exactly. Always remember what makes your agency and get that across to the client. So, and in some ways that works better. You know, we're not a big consultancy or who literally just come into digital in the last few years because they've seen this as the hot space. Like Cyberlook as an agency, we've been around for, I think this is 16 years now. Yeah, 16th year. As you said, Spencer, at the start, like Danny's always had this digital transformation mindset. That's always been our purpose, and that's a really good sales clients. Like that's our core. That's what we've become good at as an independent agency who focus on that. This is why you should hire us. So always maintain like what your core is. Don't try and be something you're not. Always adapt because it changes. Like what we're selling now is different to what we were selling 4 years ago, but remain kind of in basically the essence of the agency being the same thing.
It's funny, a lot of people, they start off really proud of their story of, you know, why they started the business, and then when they get bigger, they get almost embarrassed of it, and they go, "Oh, the big new clients don't want to hear that story of how we got started." But actually, they think they do sometimes. They want to know why you do what you do, and I think that's a good message there, Siji, to say to people, you know, don't lose who you are, don't forget who you are at the essence, right? Because often that's the authentic version of you. It's not like trying to pretend to be someone else that you aren't, right? So I've used this saying quite a lot recently, Siji, but I don't know if you know Chris Perry at all, but Chris Perry used to own Razorfish. Well, I think he used to be the CEO of Razorfish and Avenue A, which was
I know Razorfish, but I don't think I know him. But
yeah, they kind of came together and it became this big global agency. And he always used to say to me, you know, any big agency of nine people can be beaten by any small agency with 9 people, because big agencies only have 9 good people in them, you know. And I always say it's quite interesting that you can win bigger opportunities against bigger agencies, as long as you've got a good core team in your business.
And I guess that's one of the things that we do have. Like I said, I'm probably the 5th or 6th longest serving member at Cyberlook. There's a good solid core. We want people to stay, but at the same time, we know that's not the realities of the working world. But when people come, we hire really good people. We like to build and develop them, and then bring on. I think one thing from a hiring perspective is get that balance of seniors and juniors, right? And I think the bigger we've got, we've looked at more senior hires, because there is a level that we're at from a reputational perspective, which 7-8 years ago, we could have hired a junior to fulfill that role, but really you do need those senior people too, who can actually help bring up those juniors. So it's about getting that good balance between the two as well.
Yeah. So I can't really have you on this show and let you get away without talking about that LinkedIn post. For someone who doesn't use LinkedIn a lot, who writes a post that, like the post you wrote, he had some big significant importance, not just then, but just ongoing, right? But before we start, like how many likes did that post get? It was like 250,000 or something, wasn't it?
No, so it wasn't that big. It was.
Are you sure?
Hundreds and 30.
Still in the 60s.
It's over 135,000.
It was only 135,000. Only 135,000. And I seem to remember it's like 5,000 comments. I mean, first of all, do you want to just talk a bit about that post anyway? And then really, I'd like to know what was the impact of it more than anything. Like what?
Yeah.
It must have caused that amount of awareness of you. I mean, you must have had, I don't know how many views that must be if you had that many likes. I'm just guessing it must be millions, right?
Yeah. And that's, you say, as you're saying, like I'm on and off social media. I think at one point I couldn't really use LinkedIn because literally just notifications. Like I was missing so many things. It was too much to handle. It's like, this is what it's like being famous.
You certainly had 15 minutes of fame through that post.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say my most liked post before that was about 300 people liking a post of me post a picture of this dog. And so this is like a next level scale, but equally so, if anything I did was to, get big and get that virality, I'm glad it was this post because it was something that I felt really strongly about at the time and still do. And clearly, I think by the level of conversation that it sparked up within the professional settings, meant that many other people felt quite strongly about this too. So,
but what was really great about the post was that you obviously there was there was a lot of sentiment around the time, and I think people listening probably should know a bit more. That basically, Siji, on the back of the Black Lives Matter, all of the events that happened last year, and what happened was that you wrote an article basically that was called Black Lives Matter, yes, even in the workplace. And you kind of took it down a little bit to kind of grassroots level for everyday people who are working. And also it caused a massive connection because I think a lot of people who maybe just were acting a little bit blind to kind of some of the inequalities that happen in the workplace and around them, right? And people were kind of a bit closing their eyes to these things. And I think you just wrote some very practical, functional advice that actually everybody could just take and actually action. It's very actionable, and that's what I loved about it. What's your interpretation?
I mean that was it. So leading up to that, it was just after George Floyd's murder. And like shortly before that, I'm not sure if you remember, but there was the Arbery shooting in America too, where a black guy was going for a run, got shot because people in the neighborhood thought he looked suspicious because he was running in that area. And it wasn't until there was a lot of social media pressure that the people who shot him actually got arrested. So there was a lot of that story distressed me, just thinking about that, because look, as a black man in the UK too, I've experienced racism. It happens here. A lot of people tend to want to pretend it doesn't or like to make excuses, but it happens here too. But that story really hit me. And then with a George Floyd murder, like I think that really kind of touched everyone. But what I noticed was, first on my own personal kind of social media channels, there was literally only people who were talking about these things at the time of it happening were those within my black circle of friends. And I've got a lot of white friends. I went to Bath Uni. I think. I
was going to say to you, I didn't see that post. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and it just goes to show how the algorithm definitely has. Because I didn't see that post until you had at least 75,000. I was like, how the hell have I not seen a post of this gravitas? And that then made me realize that how aggressive really the AI works in terms of actually what content do you see. Because you would think if someone on your network wrote a post with that much engagement, I would be served it almost straight away, right?
And that was part of the point as well. It was like, so the day I wrote the post was, when everyone had the black boxes across their social media. But I went on LinkedIn that day and I just noticed there was, again, maybe it's an algorithm that was being passed through to me, but I saw nobody talking about it. I was seeing people selling their services or promoting themselves, and that annoyed me. I was like, are we actually just going to pretend like this big thing isn't happening because LinkedIn is meant to be for business, when in fact racism and systemic issues and bias happens in a workplace, and that feeds into our personal lives. So it started as like a Instagram post, a little bit of a rant. It turned into an article where I was basically saying, look, this is the situation for a lot of Black people who probably don't want to write this or say this, but there's a lot of people who are hurt right now. This big thing has happened. There'll be many people in their workplaces where no one's mentioned it. It's just business as usual. They expect you to come into the office, continue to function, when actually there's a lot going on behind the scenes for you. So there was some practical advice in that about what everyone can do within their organizations to basically start to address the elephant in the room, which is this whole kind of systemic bias that happens in the workplace, and make sure that your Black colleagues felt heard, felt listened to, and there was space for them too. And like you said, clearly it struck a chord with a lot of people to a point that it actually then got picked up by, I think, some weird people in America who started making it a very political thing. And like they started saying, but how come there's Black people shooting each other, I'm completely trying to move off the topic that I was talk about, but overall I think the sentiment towards it was like amazing. A lot of people said to me, like, the way I wrote it and what I wrote opened their eyes to something that they didn't know had really been an issue. And then I think since then there's been a lot more talk about it, and I think there's a lot more awareness. But I think at the time of writing it, a lot of people were probably too afraid to talk about that kind of thing. And me in my position as a director in a growing digital agency, I guess I didn't have those same fears where I was like, if I write this, I'm going to lose my job. It did cross my mind, if I write this,
did it really?
I might have some clients who aren't going to like what I'm writing, but ultimately I had to, again, it's like, it's the work side of things that deep, that such a personal issue that is so important to the wider world and the wider good should be suppressed.
Yeah. And really, do you need clients in your business who can't listen to, you know, what you're saying? You probably would. So maybe it wouldn't have been a bad thing if
exactly
reacted badly. But I think, you know, the reality is that it was a really important piece of writing, because I said, because it was, you know, you were giving people some practical, actionable stuff, and it got them thinking. And you know what? I go through life, and you know, sometimes I can live in a bit of a bubble. I might talk to, you know, Black owners of agencies, and I probably ask them more about their business troubles, but I never really say to them, how has racism affect your journey so far? What have you had to deal with? You know, share those stories with me. And so, you know, after your post, I actually had quite a few conversations which maybe I would have avoided historically, and not avoided, but just because in a way I think by not talking about it, I wasn't maybe creating I don't know, like just like making the world a better, equal place. And that's the truth, right? So, but actually I was really shocked, because when I spoke to some friends who run agencies, I actually learned some of the things they experienced. It horrified me, and I never knew. I just thought maybe that doesn't really happen anymore, you know. And the reality is that it probably happens more than we all realize. And so I think everyone should really thank you for writing that post. And if they haven't seen it, you should probably make it a bit of a charter inside their agency. It feels like a really good sort of charter. But I've met some fantastic people recently, and I can't remember Mills's second name now. He's a guy who's got an agency in Manchester, and he's probably doing live shows. You never remember. And he's got a fantastic employee engagement agency, and he's focusing very much on diversity and culture. And I think that I have seen, by the way, I just want you to know that I think there is definitely there's always more that can be done, but there has been some really big shifts. I mean, you know, it is on pretty much every one of our board agendas now. You know, we're challenging people about the way that they are recruiting, and they're not doing the same old, you know, getting referrals from existing colleagues and making sure they're getting much diverse candidates and diversity across all areas. Like, it's just making sure that people are, actually working at this rather than just willfully, blindly continuing on and just ignoring, the fundamental challenges out there.
Yeah, I'd say, looking on a year forward, there's been a lot. I've seen a lot more conversations happening. I think it's going along the right path. I think there's still a long way to go, but I think, like you said, there's the more general awareness of it now. But one of the things I've said and I've said since is, when the hype dies down, like let's remember what this is all about, and it's about equality. That's all anyone's really asking for here. And to be treated with the same levels of respect, the same opportunities, and to not let the fact that you can't control, being the color of your skin, be a deterrent to you progressing in your career.
I agree with that. And I think agency world in particular has got a lot to learn, because I think, when one of the things, Siji, that one of the advantages about our community is that because it's free for founders, we genuinely get much better diversity, because there's no barriers. There's no barriers to enter. And so actually we get, and I don't mean necessarily, I mean diversity from all perspectives, by types of agencies, by people running it, male, female, ethnicity, whatever it is. It's like, cultural background, even countries. Like, we've got reasonably big memberships now from Africa, the Middle East, North America, especially. So I think that's been really I feel quite positive, opposed to a lot of the paid parts of our industry where maybe it doesn't get to see that level of diversity more automatically. So look, you're right. I think you got to keep the awareness up, though, make sure that things don't suddenly settle down back to normal and everyone forgets again.
I think what I'd love to see is more Black people within business development, within the sort of agency landscape. And I kind of see where fundamentally the issue is, which is a bit bigger than just the agencies. In the sense of, we were talking about how sales, business development, new business, a lot of it is about building relationships. As well as that, we know that, as I talked about, the margins of winning and losing are so fine that sometimes it's the smallest thing to help you to win it or not. Now, if, as we know, in a lot of places with decision makers, it's not very diverse. And we know that a lot of sales, intrinsically, is about the relationship you have with those people. Well, if you're a white male entering the pitch room and the person across the table from you is a white male, there's likely to be just that unconscious synergy that you're going to have between yourselves, and to an extent. And sometimes that unconscious bias towards someone who's Black, for example, may exist across the table. So when the margins are that slim, and it's all about building relationships, I think until you have more people on the client side too, that are really invested in diversity and having that inclusive mindset, then agency new business teams go, I'm going to put people in who are more likely to win this for us. And some of it's unconscious. Don't get me wrong. I don't think everyone's got this malicious kind of thought process. But when you know certain people are more likely to appeal to those in the room who provides both the business, then you're going to be making decisions based on that. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of maybe Black people aren't getting the roles in comparison to some of their white colleagues. That's just kind of a hunch I have. And I think until diversity and inclusion is treated as an important thing for clients as well as agencies, you're not going to necessarily get the same uptake in agencies hiring Black people kind of leading their sales teams.
It does. I mean, I don't know if you've ever met Vim. Do you know Vim Patel, who owns Giant?
No.
Pete and I, Vim Patel basically was our new business guy. So we had an Indian guy who was actually, from Kenya, from South Africa. And basically he he did our new business. And, I don't think, honestly, once and I wish he was here, he could probably validate that, but we tried to do any matching or something along the lines, all right, you're going to have in fact, if anything, I think, to be fair, sometimes he got on, like when I pitched to Aston Martin, and, they sort of looked down at me because I wore jeans, but they loved him. So I think sometimes, you have to, I don't know. What I'm trying to say is I don't know. Naturally, I believe in bigger organizations, this can be more of a problem. I just only from my own personal experience. But that said, I agree with you. I think there still is a lack of overall people who are either Black, Asian, or Middle Eastern, or who are in new business, right? Yeah. I mean, that is, you can see that. And I think, I went on Clubhouse have you been on Clubhouse much?
Yeah, I went through a period where I was on it all the time, kind of faded away again.
Look, as a white middle-aged 40-year-old, actually, no shit, I'm 50. I was 50 on Saturday, Siji.
Is it
40? I still feel 40, but at least I've moved out of that stereotype bracket now, huh? But, I loved it on Clubhouse because when I first went on there, because it felt much more diverse and the conversation was better and everything about it, because it certainly was originally when I first went on there in January. I mean, I think already now it's doing its geo stuff and fencing it down. But you see, and in a way, I felt a little bit like I see now what it would be like to be in a much richer, diverse audience where it genuinely was, as many Black people as there were white people on a forum, and it was great to see it. And I think those benefits when you see that happen and you don't have to, I mean, it must be hard for you at times joining panels and stuff. And I do that in the UK, like we do a lot of events. And sometimes I feel really sorry for the Black agency owners. I feel they're sitting there thinking, shit, there's like 28 white people running agencies and there's one Black guy. It must be tough being in those situations. Or do you just deal with it?
No, I mean, it's something I've had to deal with like my whole life, right? Being the minority in the room and within the environment. It's something I've learned to deal with. I don't think it just have to be that way, but for me, in many ways, I'm used to that. But I'm not going to lie, when I see another Black person in those forums and in those scenarios, it's comforting, and within business development, I know two other people who are roughly around the same age as me, who are doing great stuff as well. Bianca McLeish, she won the BD 100 awards recently. Wow. And another guy called Yemi. Like when I've recently kind of met them, it's great having people my age who, like when we're talking about our experiences, there's a shared kind of commonality there, which I can't get with other BDs because they understand certain things I'm saying, even if I'm not articulating it particularly well, probably like now, to be fair, and vice versa. So it is comforting when you have other people who, you can relate to in the same space.
Yeah, you've got shared experiences of, probably tough times you've had to overcome in the role that you're doing. I mean, I can see, just listening to you talk, you're obviously a high achiever with high levels of resilience, but I guess some of that has come from, your background, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And in some ways, I probably wouldn't be the same person I am today if I hadn't had some of the more negative experiences I've had throughout my life. But equally so, I don't have any children yet, but I want to have that children someday. I don't want them to have to go through literally the same situations that I've been in, because yes, I've got to where I am now. I'm very grateful, but I'm also fully aware that there's other Black people who are more talented than me who maybe didn't get that opportunity that I managed to get, and therefore they're not in the same position I'm in. My university, like Bath Business School, I think there was 2-3 Black people in a course of like 200. I'm not one, and it was a top business school, but I'm not one of the 3 top smartest Black people in the UK. I know I'm not, but that's the thing. Even at that educational level, getting more people who look like me, who come from similar backgrounds to me, like into those universities to get that level of training and understanding, will help to diversify the workforce and the workplace. So it's a, as everyone knows, it's a big issue. All I can do is use my influence within my circles and try and make a difference. And hearing what Spencer said, that my article that I wrote had made him have certain conversations and think about things differently. In some ways, I've achieved what I wanted to do. I'm not trying to change the world by myself. I'm just trying to basically get a message out, share that message with those who are around me. And if I can make that difference, then, you know, I'd rather that was my legacy than, you know, being the growth director of a 50 million agency in some ways, you know?
Yeah. And also, Siji, when I had some conversations, I asked the question, what could I be doing more to help you? What could I be doing more with my influence to help you? They just, in two cases, it was the fact you're having this conversation just means is everything. Yeah. But you're doing enough. It's okay. And that was nice to hear that. But it was nice to get, I think it was the appreciation that someone was having that conversation with particular people.
Yeah.
So,
I think the appreciation's really important. So having those conversations and then lead into action, because for change to happen, we have to go beyond that appreciation and actually do things ourselves to try and create that change. And if we're doing that, then yes, I feel positive about, you know, where things are going to be going.
Yeah, great. Well, that was a really, I'm pleased that we got to speak about it. What I wanted to ask you as well was, so when it happened though, what was your life like at that point? I mean, obviously, as you said, the notifications were going off.
Yeah.
Did it in any shape or form? Was it an overall positive experience? I mean, you sort of said it was, but or was it just very difficult to deal with that level of fame and notoriety?
No, it was a mostly positive experience. You know, I think, like I said, for the most part, people understood the message I was trying to get across, and it landed very well. I ended up having meetings and conversations with different organizations who wanted to know more about this. And again, I used that opportunity to get to know some D&I professionals and agencies who do this, like they do this stuff. Like I at no point did I claim to be, even in the article I said, I'm not an expert at this. There's people who are much smarter than me who know about this stuff. I then linked those people to different organizations, because at the end of the day, I wasn't doing it for my own personal gain. Yes, it was like everyone likes to, you know, to get praised and stuff like that. I'm not going to pretend I didn't like that side of it. But ultimately, for change to happen, if I started going to all these organizations saying, this is now what you should be doing, it's actually counterproductive to the whole movement, because I'm not an expert in it. So link people up together with that new platform, being able to share more and more things around this topic that other people have written and people have said, but I now know have more eyes and ears on it. That's kind of where I see myself contributing to the wider piece.
Yeah, love it. Great. Well, I can't believe the time. It's really flown on.
It's what happens when you don't speak for a couple of years, Spencer.
I know. And I'm really pleased we caught up. And I hope that very soon, when things totally go back to normal, we can find time to cross paths at some place and have a proper face to face. I would like that very much, rather than another Wire Hive Awards where we cross each other. Yeah, you're picking up a trophy for something you've won. So
picking up a trophy or a drink, I don't know which one.
Yeah, one or the other. So thank you for joining us today. Really loved the conversation. And I really appreciate you giving up the time as well. I know you literally came off a client call just before you joined us. So thanks so much. I hope everyone enjoyed the episode. Once again, thank you to everyone. Please, we mentioned Clubhouse there. We've got Agencynomics now on Clubhouse. Okay. We are doing events every Tuesday now at 5:00. So please follow Agencynomics on there. And once again, just a final thank you to Siji for joining us today, and Peter Hoole, as always, and Caitlin, our producer.
No, I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Hey, no worries.
Thank you.
And I think that's a wrap, Caitlin.